What marketing lessons have we learned from the millions of pounds we tracked in sales for our customers, Dan?
Before we get into that, I want to just
Before you get into that, Dan, I'm going to stop you there. I'm going to stop you there. I know, I've seen your notes, mate. I know you're just going to go into a tirade of brilliant things about yourself.
No.
You've got notes basically saying all the best work that you've been involved with within our business in the past. And I just want to stand up for the listeners and say, why the hell do we give a shit about that when we're trying to listen to an entertaining and informative business/marketing podcast?
I'll answer your question.
I don't give a shit about you and your business.
Right. What I was going to say is before that, I just wanted to share some examples and data of what we've achieved because based on this episode title, we're sharing lessons we've learned from tracking millions in online sales. I just want to give a bit of credibility. People might be thinking, oh, what have you actually achieved and what have you learned from what you've achieved? Just let me quickly share some key things. All
right.
Just very quickly.
You've made your point. So we need to just briefly give credibility so people know that we know what we're talking about and they can trust us. You have 30 seconds to say good stuff that we've achieved in this area and do not go over that. And then I'm going to stop you. Go.
Okay. We've generated £1 million contract for a B2B brand in the health and safety sector. We've generated £2.5 million plus of e-commerce sales for a B2C client in the health food space. We've worked with world-leading brands like the BBC, Wall, Sunny D, Citibank. We've helped a client get stocked in a top 5 UK supermarket and generated over 10 million views on TikTok. We've generated tens of millions of views for our customers on social media. We've tracked millions of pounds of sales for the brands that we work with.
And he's got big biceps. So
right, so there's an important reason to saying this, Lloyd. That's like we've done some really good stuff and we've learned a lot from it.
I thought you were going to stop.
Okay, no, I'll stop it now. Let's go to the lessons then.
Okay.
So what have we learned from achieving those results for our clients? Because we weren't always this brilliant, Lloyd.
I know.
It's taken a while to get here.
Yeah.
But we've learned a lot of lessons.
Obviously I'm taking the piss out of you because that's really fun to do. But there are a lot of people online spouting stuff and they actually have no experience behind it. So I think the reason Dan felt he needed to give this episode credibility was so that, we've actually done this stuff.
Yeah.
And learnt these lessons. It's not just like, oh, cool, I'm a 17-year-old podcaster who's never done anything in business and I'm going to tell you how to make £1 million tomorrow.
In 3 seconds.
Yeah.
So lesson number 1.
You want to know lesson number 1?
Do you want lesson number 1?
Juicy bits already. It's basically don't get cold feet with social campaigns. So the biggest losses I've experienced people making in social campaigns are, and it's not only been once, like there's been 2 or 3 examples of this, or like 2 or 3 examples where it nearly got to this and we managed to talk people around. But it's basically people investing in paid social campaigns, investing in content creation and starting a campaign, but then pulling away budget like when they don't get sales immediately. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is because it's something that has happened and it's something that we have to convince and persuade clients to not do fairly regularly, and then they continue and get really good returns. And I think it is that just the thing of like, oh, we've invested quite a lot in this. Say you run a campaign, it's been live for 3 weeks, and you're like, oh, haven't got like the amount of sales I would want to get in the long term in like a 3-week period, or like, oh, we haven't had that many leads yet in the first 3 weeks, and they then and this is quite often business owners or marketing managers that are in charge of these budgets, and they get kind of nervous, and I think they consider
pulling the plug
basically, and pulling that plug basically locks in a big loss on the project, because you've invested all the time and resources and money in the great stuff, creating brilliant content and the start of like managing a campaign, but you haven't let the great assets you've produced be part of a brilliant campaign for long enough to start getting the return. And it doesn't make any logical sense to pull the plug at that point, but I also completely understand how it can get scary.
I think to back up what you're saying, you have to think logically. if you're trying to convince someone to buy something, right? That can take a while. Like you're not. It also depends on what the purchase is as well. If you're trying to get someone to buy a £5 food product, that's very different to trying to get someone to sign up to something that's $100,000 a year in the B2B space.
Yeah.
Like it's a very different purchase. So I think it's important to understand the context of what you sell, what the customer journey looks like. There may be certain times throughout the year that they're more ready to buy, and it's going to take all that warming up and convincing over time. Then when they're ready to buy, they're going to get in touch. So I think it's important to understand that context.
I'll give some examples in a minute as well of where we've had direct experience of these concerns and then it leading to a really positive outcome to kind of justify this. But I think a key thing to think is your product or service a considered purchase? So there are things that aren't a considered purchase that you may be able to get immediate results from. For example, I bought a squash racket grip for like £7 after seeing one ad. Yeah. I basically thought it looked cool. I'm a bit of a baller these days, so I can just spend £7 without really worrying about it. So, because pretty cool guy,
pretty big deal.
Yeah, pretty big deal. And so I just saw one ad, thought that looks cool, and I bought it. But then actually reflecting on that purchase, I can't think of another time I've done that in like the last couple of years. Most purchases, even if they're like £60-70 rather than like £20,000, that might be a more like, in B2B, talking about the kind of levels we might be looking at, it's a considered purchase. Your potential customers aren't going to see one ad or even two ads or even three ads and then think, I'm going to buy that. If your service, say you have an average order value of £30,000, it's going to take time and a lot of touch points and a lot of educating, informing, building credibility and trust before they even consider being at a point where they're like, I might get in touch with these people. I think if you think logically like that, you wouldn't get nervous after 3 weeks of a campaign and not having loads of leads or loads of sales.
Rory Sutherland talks a lot about two parts to a purchasing decision: buying with emotion and buying with rationale. I think looking at what you're saying about a considered purchase, the more considered the purchase is, the more rationale is needed for them to eventually buy with that emotion. Yeah. So for example, if like your squash racket example, you very much kind of bought with emotion, like, oh, I saw that, I like that, I want that, and you didn't need a huge amount of rationale other than it's £7, it looks cool, I'll buy it now.
Yeah.
Whereas like you say, if you're like a B2B decision maker and you're looking for a new supplier of safety gloves, like we've got results that I mentioned earlier, the £1 million campaign in that area. It's going to be a much more considered purchase. You needed a lot more rationale. Why should we switch our supplier? What benefits is it going to? How is it going to help us? When should we do? Like, there's lots of rationale behind it rather than just an emotive, like, oh, but I'll invest in £1 million new contract for safety gloves. It's like a lot more thought process goes into it.
So let's use that as an example. So this is a real campaign that we managed towards the end of last year, I think it was. So that client, that £1 million contract happened in the 12th week, I believe, of the campaign or the lead that led to that. So not even there was a deal done.
A process with their sales team that went on after that.
But so before that 12th week, the amount of leads that we got through, I think it would have been kind of like at the end of that project, if you stopped it after 11 weeks, you would have gone, oh yeah, that was quite a good return. Like that was all right. Got a few leads that look like they're going to convert. Nothing amazing, but it was all right. So if they pulled the plug at that point, would have been all right. Not really exceeding expectations, not underwhelming, would have been all right. Week 12, that lead that is a multinational corporation that leads to £1 million contract. So I think that there's the evidence, if you need any, of like, you need to give this time. If someone has the responsibility of spending a budget of over £1 million, they are going to need to see a lot of stuff from you to trust you as a business to even give you the time of day. They need to know a lot about your product or service. They need to know data. They need to see social proof. And then they're going to go, okay, I can at least consider working with these guys. Let's get in touch.
How do you just check you're not burning money though? Because this is an important part. Like, we're going down the way, you got to give it time. You got to, the results, people need convincing stuff. How do you check you're not just burning money and this is completely pointless? None of it's working. We should just completely give up.
So simple.
Okay, go on.
But it's simple for us, I suppose, because we have the data from all of our different client campaigns. It's simple for a bigger corporation that maybe has more data to draw upon. But all the other stages of a campaign, you can see how things are going before you get to the stage of like a sale or a lead or a whatever that may be. So we track from the initial stages an awareness campaign. So when we first put content in front of potential customers, we have a goal of looking at previous data, looking at the industry and the type of product or service. Like, right, we want to hit these CPMs. So for
what on earth's a CPM?
Basically, the cost of getting in front of 1,000 people is in simple terms. So we can be like, okay, we're aiming for like an £8.50 CPM for this really expensive,
which is the first stage of the customer journey. Just getting in front of them, that's that first touch point.
And then without having to burn through thousands and thousands on like the whole marketing funnel that leads to that purchase, we can just look at that first stage and go, oh, okay, right, we're hitting £9.50, so slightly more expensive than what we want to be. Or we can be like, oh, that's £5 CPM. So we know that's like double as good as we need to get to the end result we need to get to.
Yeah.
So we can already see at that point, and then you can have honest conversations. So say maybe if a campaign wasn't going as well at that point, you can have the conversations with your boss or whatever and be like, oh, actually, we're 20% off where we need to be. So we're looking at making these changes. Or you can be at the point where it's really reassuring because you can be like, we're not at the point where we're going to get sales, but we can see actually the campaign up to now is performing 150% better than we planned. So we're confident when it gets to that point, we're going to get the results we want.
So in essence, it's tracking data at each stage of the customer journey to give you evidence that you're going to get to that end point.
So we're tracking the cost of getting in front of those potential customers to check it's where it needs to be. Because obviously if it's well expensive, then you're going to reach less people for the same budget. We're tracking how many people are engaging with the content. So how many people are actually viewing these videos? How many people are clicking on a link to go to that website? And how does that compare to other campaigns we've run or kind of average results you'd expect to get in that industry? Because obviously we want to exceed average results. We want to be the top performers. So you're looking at that. And it might be, again, it can either be, oh, okay, so we're reaching people, but we're not engaging. Something needs to change because we're not engaging as many people as we need to. Or it can be like, okay, we reached them for cheaper than we wanted to. The engagement's great. They're clearly interested. They're watching these videos. They're clicking on to this link to learn more about the product. So we're confident as we move them through the marketing funnel, there's going to be plenty of people that are going to purchase our product or going to be leads that we can nurture to invest in our service.
I think an important tip for any founders or people in marketing that like work with agencies or run campaigns is to ensure you've got an insight into that data. And like if you're currently working with a company to run a campaign for you, ask them for the different data points at each stage of the customer journey so that you have a clear insight into that.
Yeah. And again, I know we gave the specific example of like the £1 million contract in week 12, but I looked into it. If the majority of our clients got cold feet after 2 months, the majority of them would have lost money.
Yeah.
But then the majority of them make money when they continue beyond that 2 month point. Yeah. So looking at that data on a number of campaigns, you kind of look at it and you're like, okay, well, it's obvious you wouldn't want to pull the plug. But after 8 weeks, you might be like, oh, hang on, this isn't looking like it's going to return. So yeah, I suppose the data gives us confidence, but not everyone can see that. So that's why we're sharing it with you.
Another massive lesson that we've seen from the most successful campaigns we've run is that they have, when someone has gone through that journey, they've become aware of what you do. You've built that trust over time, and they're at the stage where they're really potentially ready to take that final call to action, either to purchase a product or whatever it is, to fill out a lead form. Having a good offer can completely change a campaign.
Yeah.
And by offer, I'm not saying, oh, everyone do a discount, do a sale on your products. That's not what I mean. But there needs to be something there that's going to make them want to take that final call to action. So a prime example of this, one of the campaigns you mentioned where we generated that £1 million contract, the final call to action was to sign up for a free trial to test that product. Like that is a no-brainer offer. And I know this isn't right for if you've got a much higher value product, that's not right for that. But it was a no-brainer offer. They knew they'd got a better product than their competitors. So just getting their customer to try that product, they knew that once they were in there, they had a high chance of converting that into an actual customer.
If you think for that potential customer as well, there's absolutely zero risk in them trying that product for free. If there's any investment involved, then you start adding risk for that person to take, so they might consider it. But offering that free trial, there's no risk for them. They're not stuck in any kind of contract like, well, no, we sent you the free one, so you gotta buy a little bit from us or anything like that. And I think for the strange thing is, it doesn't matter if your product or service is better than the product or service that potential customers are currently using. Because there's still the risk of changing. I think you have to lower the perceived risk. So say you're using a service, some kind of business, and another service is being advertised saying, we're better than that one.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually matter until you reduce the perceived risk enough of changing supplier. Do you know what I mean? So if it's like, we're better than them, listen to this stuff about how we're better, you're still thinking the risks I perceive are, if I stay with what I'm doing now, I know that this is good. It's fine. There's no risk there. If I switch to these guys that say they're better, there's still a risk in my mind of changing. I mean, they might not be better. Like, they might not be a good fit and that kind of thing. And you need to reduce that perceived risk.
And this is why it's so important to overcome objections and understand your customers' objections. Because, for example, we create content that overcomes these types of objections, but we didn't know that until we actually asked the customer, what are the most common objections your sales team are facing? And we can create content to overcome those objections.
Yeah. And overcoming those objections or reducing that perceived risk, examples of how it can be done. Again, not all of them will be relevant to you, but it can be a free trial or a free sample, like we've just said. That might not be relevant to you, but if it's not, introducing something like a money back guarantee. So if the quality of your products or services aren't what you've said, that you will guarantee that they'll get a refund. And if you know that they are that good, you don't need to worry. Also, social proof and using data basically gets rid of any doubt. If you can use enough data, as in like 98% of people say this is better, people are going to be like, oh, okay, like there's no risk there to me, or there's a tiny risk, so I'm happy to make that choice. Another way that I think we've used in the past is triggering another emotion so that the risk is worth taking. So one thing here is like, it could be around sustainability, for example. If people feel strongly enough that it's morally right to change supplier, so like current supplier is burning plastic and using child slavery, right?
Okay. Don't really want to work with them.
Yeah. I don't personally, but maybe you are. And then it's like, oh, it's a risk to change those ones that don't use child slavery and are working in a sustainable way. But I feel so strongly that that's the right thing to do. I'm going to take that risk.
That's the emotional side.
Yeah.
So it's those two parts again. It's the rationale with overcoming objections, demonstrating with data why your product is better, but then it's triggering those emotions so that you're hitting both of those 2 points to encouraging that purchase.
Another emotion, if you can manage it, it's great, is I'm so excited by working with this person or using this product. I don't mind about the risk because this sounds so cool. I just want, and there's certain brands that have managed to create that for almost any new product and they're really good at it, where it's like, oh God, I just can't wait to get my hands on this camera. I'm so excited. I don't care that I'm going to have to spend $3,000 on it. I'm just so excited to use it. I'm going to take that risk. So if you can build that excitement in a product or service, that emotion can be really positive as well.
What other key lessons have we learnt from generating millions of pounds of online sales?
Certainly for paid social campaigns, it's investing money, but not time into paid social. So Some
Right.
businesses have money to spend, have budgets, but they're really busy. The people within the business are really busy. So they're just like, well, let's just 10 grand budget on this paid social campaign. Just get the ads out there.
What, as in internally you're saying they do that?
Yeah, I think normally it'd be like, well, we can just run this. We got £10,000. If we spend 10 grand, it's going to get results, isn't it?
Yeah.
Great. And it's so easy to spank money down the drain if you don't put the time into knowing what you're doing. And I think this is a lot of people's worries with paid social campaigns. They've kind of had the experience, even if it's when they started the business, like, God, I spent 200 quid on Facebook ads.
Didn't
just
work.
got absolutely nothing. Didn't work. And you know, at every scale that works. A bigger business, yeah, we put 10 grand behind it, got no customers. Oh, we put 50 grand behind it, got no customers. If you don't put the resources into having someone learn the skills they need to manage a paid social campaign effectively, or getting outside help like we do to run those campaigns, it's still no matter how much money you have, it's still really easy to waste it.
Like you're better off using some of that budget to get an expert to show you how to do it better, or to outsource it to an expert and use a part of that budget for whatever their fee is.
100%, because it is, and I understand the concern of people paid social, because it is genuinely easy to just chuck money down the drain.
How do I know that you're not just being biased because we're a company that people can outsource to?
Well, because you don't outsource to us. It's fine. Like just don't chuck money at it.
Yeah.
Because and I'm saying you don't even have to use an outside agency like us that do it as our day-to-day jobs. Like, just have someone internally that upskills and can get to a point where, like, the investment in that person within your business is going to be worth it if you don't waste 80% of your budget.
And I mean, we've had projects where it's been completely outsourced to us. We've demonstrated it worked, and then we've supported in-house teams to then take that back in-house.
Yeah.
So
I want to be clear that I'm not like gatekeeping social ads. Like, if you don't know, you shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that. It's just make sure you invest the time in, or someone in the organization invest the time in learning before you just chuck money at it. And I've got some really common examples of how I've seen businesses just waste money like this. So I'm just going to go through these so you can make sure you're not these guys. Okay.
So don't do this.
Don't do this. I've seen businesses get really excited about a single asset, creative asset. So an image they've created or a short video or something. And they're so excited, and it's genuinely good.
Yeah.
They're so excited about it. They just can't see it failing. So like, God, we create this image. If you saw that, you'd buy it, wouldn't you? Yeah, I know you would. Yeah. And then they get so excited, they just put loads of money behind that, and like 99 times out of 100 gets absolutely no sales, nothing. And it's like, again, we spoke about this. Unless it's a very cheap product with like
if that's a
no decision making needed, it's very unlikely one single ad is going to do a brilliant job. And I get this. Like, we've even had creative ideas for ads, and I've kind of thought like, if you put that in front of anyone, they're going to buy it.
Other than if you're selling a squash racket grip to Lloyd.
For £7, then I will. But this is what I mean. Like, a small number of people for a low value purchase might do, but even for a low value purchase, a big number of people aren't going to. And for a higher value purchase and a considered purchase, it's not going to happen. So no matter how exciting and funny or engaging or creative or persuasive that single ad is, it's never going to do the job you need it to.
And we've seen that. Just a quick example. The example I mentioned at the start, where we've tracked over £2.5 million of e-commerce sales for that health food product. We created close to 100 different assets that we've been, over months, have been targeting people with to convince. Like, think about how you get convinced to buy a product or service. You don't see one thing and then buy it. You have to be hit with all these different types of content to convince you. Something
I see as well, a bit of an insider into a business managing paid social campaigns for clients. I also see, I think because obviously this is what we do, and people pay us to manage their social campaigns. I think clients quite often see it and kind of think, well, if they're doing it, surely we could just do this. And I see you, clients, running like small tests alongside what we do, being like, well, we can do that.
Yeah.
And then obviously quite quickly realize, okay, that we created this really cool thing, but it just doesn't work as an ad on its own. So and then you're convinced, okay, like people know what they're doing does make sense here.
So what should they do then? Instead of creating this one asset, create multiple assets.
Yeah, you need different assets for your social campaigns that help people along the customer journey and at every stage, and different assets for different audiences. And no matter how exciting and creative one thing is, it's not going to do the job of getting people to that. You might manage with one asset to make people think, huh, that's a cool business, or like, oh, that product looks pretty cool, but you're not going to get them to the point of where you need them to be.
What other mistakes then do you like the common?
Just poor targeting.
Yeah.
It's so easy to waste money on poor targeting, because if you think, if you say you got £1,000 budget, if 40% of the people that you target are never going to become customers, that's just 400 quid down the drain. And it's like, I see it a lot where it's like, there might be some of the audience, it might be like, oh yeah, that's a great audience to target, but whatever percentage, and when you scale this, it gets more of a problem. So say it's like, oh, 20% of the audience, that's just £200 down the drain. And those small margins could be the difference between successful and an unsuccessful campaign. Because if you're throwing 40% of the budget down the drain, you've got to get really good results with 60% of the budget targeting the right people.
This reinforces that point you made of getting outside help or getting training or something, so that whoever's running this knows how to properly target people, because you'll save that 400 quid by them knowing what they're doing.
Yeah. And the final common mistake is not adapting to changes. So we've seen this probably most commonly in a few clients that have taken on managing the ad campaigns in-house after they've worked with us. And quite often, because social platforms change so much, a campaign can be working brilliantly. Like, look at these sales just flooding in. I can just keep this turned on and it's going to work great. But as soon as something changes with those platforms or the algorithm, or small things like someone reporting a couple of your ads for some reason, or someone commenting something negative on an ad, can mean overnight the campaign goes from performing really well to not doing any sales or not generating any leads, doing the job it needs to. So I think not adapting to change, basically because sometimes you can get lucky and find oh, this is working. I've managed to make this work. But then one thing changes and suddenly you're like, oh shit, doesn't work at all now. And we don't know what to do. So
can I share one of my biggest lessons?
Yes, do it.
And this is something that I want to give some examples now. This is something that we use a lot in our own marketing and our customer campaigns. Yeah. And it's all about having social proof and data to back up whatever you're saying you can promise to the customer. Yeah. So what I mean by social proof is anything that shows credibility against what you're saying. This is how you can really differentiate yourself from your competitors. Everyone out there says they're the best product for whatever the problem your customer has. Everyone out there says they're better than all their competitors. They're unique. They're different.
That can't be right, can it?
No, exactly. No. So the way that you differentiate is you provide data and examples and social proof to back up what you're saying. So for example, something that we do a lot, and we've done it in this episode, is give examples of what you're saying you can deliver. So for example, at the start of this episode, we said, we've learned lots of lessons from tracking millions of pounds in online sales. Here's some examples of how we've done that and the types of companies we've done that with. Now let's go into the lessons we've learned. So we're giving those examples. Another one in terms of social proof, this is something we do a lot. We talk a lot about the amazing brands that put their trust in us to deliver great marketing campaigns for them, like the BBC or Wall or Sunny D. We're giving evidence that very credible, well-known brands are putting their trust in us. So if you're listening to this, Anchors, and you're thinking, right, we need to do this, have a think about first of all, is there any data that you have to back up what you're promising? Like, are there any studies that show, or have you done any customer surveys or feedback that demonstrate that your product does what it says on the tin, or that your customers are happy with it? Also, are there any other credibility factors that you could use? Like, are there any other trusted brands that are already customers, or accreditations you've got, or any kind of testing that your product's gone through that you can demonstrate that it does what it says on the tin? And really focus on providing those points, because if you don't have that, you just look like every other competitor saying they're the best in the market.
our most successful campaigns always have social proof and data to back up what they're saying. Because I spoke earlier about reducing perceived risk of people buying your product or service, and obviously social proof and data reduces that perceived risk. So I found a kind of a definition of social proof for you. And it says social proof is a psychological effect that leads people to conform. It creates a kind of herd mentality. The effect happens because people make a lot of their decisions based on feeling rather than sitting down and thinking about it for hours. Copying what other people have done feels like a quick and easy way to make safe choices. So that last bit, a quick and easy way to make safe choices. You see someone that you perceive to be similar to you online saying, I bought these products and I really like them. They solve my problems. Your brain goes, there's no risk there. There's someone that's like me that's saying they've done this. So this choice is safe. There's no risk there. I should do this. And it's just human nature. And that's why it works so well and why you should definitely include social proof within your social page.
I'm trying to think of like products that I'm doing that herd thing for. Like, can you think of any things that you just get because everyone else gets them? Like, I don't know, maybe for me, like, I guess I don't even consider any other brand of phone other than an Apple iPhone. I'm just self-analyzing here. And I think I've never done, whenever my contract comes for renewal, I never do research into what's the best battery life, what's the best camera. I just know that most people trust Apple. I think it's all right. I'm going to go for that. However, I bet there are other phone brands out there that actually have better battery life, are more cost effective, that have better features. I just have done that herd thing of I trust Apple.
But I think it's the risk thing. So you're using an Apple device currently and you think this does what I need it to do. I'm happy with this. You know from how Apple are clever with their marketing communications that shitloads of people use Apple products in the world. So you think lots of other people like me do this, therefore the safe decision to make is to do that. Whereas a risk is you thinking, I'm happy with this Apple product. Loads of people like me are happy with this Apple product. And now I'm going to buy a Google Pixel phone that much less people use.
That's such a good point. Like thinking about how you can make your product the safe option. And I think it is what we've said, like building up this social proof, giving evidences to other people that they trust.
You've got to reduce the risk of people taking the decision to spend money with you, basically. Not even necessarily reduce the risk, reduce the perceived risk. Should we go into our final lesson?
Yeah, go on. What's the final lesson?
So quite a simple one to finish off. It's just that like small changes, small mistakes or small improvements are like the effect is multiplied by 1,000 when you go from organic social to paid social. And it's obviously, it's like a simple concept because if 10 people see something, but then you put spend behind it and 1 million people see it, the effects are multiplied.
Yeah, positive or negative.
So positive or negative. But that's my point. So it's if you say you can't be asked to put the effort in to make sure your messaging is on point, or you don't have the time to make sure that ad copy is absolutely perfect. You don't have the time to make sure that image ad looks as the best it can. If it's an organic post, you might have missed the opportunity of getting in front of 40 people. Would have got in front of 40 more people. If you put, obviously these numbers are all completely made up. You go, I'll put £1,000 behind that. Suddenly you've missed out on getting in front of 700,000 people because you haven't made that small improvement. And I suppose it's similar to what I said about just putting money into paid spend before you're putting the time and effort into making sure that what you're doing is really good. That whether it's negative or positive, putting paid spend behind this stuff is going to exaggerate the results, exaggerate the missed opportunities, or exaggerate the brilliant results you've got because you've improved things. So until I don't often say, normally I'm like, right, take action, do things, don't just think about them for ages, because that normally stops anyone actually doing anything good. But when it comes to paid, I would say just make sure you're really happy with the campaign and the assets before they go live. Because if it's going to perform 10% worse when you're putting thousands of pounds behind it, that could be a missed opportunity of getting in front of hundreds of thousands of people.
We literally do this with our podcast. Look at what are the most successful clips to promote the podcast organically, and then use those in the paid campaign.
Yeah.
Because we've already proven organically that they're working. I've heard Gary Vee talk about this strategy as well before. Look at what's working organically. Whatever's working the best there, learn from that and put paid spend behind it.
Why not take your risks organically or an incredibly low spend to find out what actually works, and then invest in the really good stuff and exaggerate that result by putting paid spend behind it?
Yeah.
So that performs really well. I'm going to put £1,000 behind it. That didn't perform well at all. I'm literally going to spend nothing on it because I don't want to exaggerate that result. So really simple, but something that can make a massive difference.
Good lessons, Lloyd.
Thank
There's
you.
a lot
Good
of good lessons
Dan.
learned from our experience of running these kind of campaigns.
Yeah.
So hopefully anchors have found this interesting.
Yeah.
But remember, these episodes aren't free, are they, Lloyd?
No, they're not, because you make us do that thing now where
Yeah.
we say it's not free because we have a gentleman's agreement that you copy from another podcast.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
So people think that these are free to listen to and download, which you've obviously got this far. You've listened to it for free. You haven't paid us anything. We don't want money. What do we need, Lloyd?
Sorry, before I tell them what we need, in a gentleman's agreement, is that not sexist? Can we...
No, well, I did say this when we used to say it. There's also we nicked this from My First Million podcast. It's like a ladies. There's a ladies version as well. A ladies something.
Well, I think that ladies' version is just as important as a gentleman's agreement, Dan. I don't know
agree.
about you.
I agree.
It seems like you haven't given any thought to this.
I have.
Okay. All right. Well, gentleman and gentle ladies agreement. This isn't free. They need to pay.
How do they pay?
They pay by subscribing
On whichever platform they're on right
to
now.
this podcast. Yeah.
Should we wait until they do it? Or
Yeah. Okay. Here's your bill, gentle lady and gentlemen. If you wouldn't mind just paying that, thank you. We'll give you a moment.
Just clicking that subscribe button.
Cool.
And have they done it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
thank you.
thank you. That's really kind of you. Yeah, I just think it's fair that you pay for this brilliant service we're offering.
Yeah.
You know, shall we end that podcast?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, business anchors. Thank you for paying, and we'll see you in your ears next week.